Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan, and welcome to this week's episode of Living Your Journey. Each week, I get the amazing opportunity to chat with people that love what they do in life. They understand their passion, maybe it's a career path, or the social impact that they're making. It's kind of like they're following their North Star. Even though their story may change, they understand that they're on their journey every day. Today's guest brings a literal example to living your journey. Mel Soriano has recently completed his pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago. In fact, it's his second. If you're not familiar with the walking journey, it's commonly taken as a form of spiritual growth or personal discovery. There are various routes for the Camino, and many people have walked as much as 500 miles through France and Spain to the destination of the shrine of the Apostle St. James the Great in the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. If this at all sounds familiar to you, it's because it's the same pilgrimage as seen in the movie The Way with Martin Sheen. Mel and I discussed the details of the Camino, explaining the meaning and helping me understand it a little bit better, why it was important for him to take this journey a second time, and how this opportunity of growth helps him in his everyday. And then we also talked through some memorable moments of his experience. Mel is a business owner and is very active in his faith through All Saints Church in Pasadena, California, and with Integrity USA. And he shares how these Caminos are shaping his current and future journey. This was a really smart and wonderful conversation, and I found it super interesting. It was also really a reminder about finding our purpose. It's such good stuff. Okay, let's meet Mel. Well, this is so fun that we finally get to chat. It's Mel, like we were just talking about, it's been a while since we actually sat down and really just caught up. And surprisingly, it's been a couple of years since we've seen each other. And I have actually been thinking about having this catch up on the show for the two of us, since I know that you were just going to take this this wonderful journey, this pilgrimage. So I have been actually really excited for the last couple months. I just haven't said anything to you yet. I wanted you to finish your pilgrimage and then, bring in the show. So all of that is to say, welcome to the show, Mel. I'm super excited that you're here, that we get to talk about this journey.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm excited as well, and I enjoy the podcast. And I'm sort of surprised that you'd be interested, but I'd be glad to participate.
I love that you'd be surprised by that. I think that is, maybe that's a humble mark. That's because it's maybe stuff that you're just doing on your own, that it's really, personal for yourself. But I actually find it really interesting, and because, we were all able to follow along, especially in this specific journey that I'm referencing. I don't know, I find it so fascinating, interesting. And as you know about the show, it's about journeys and people being intentional and living the life that they love. That doesn't have to be just a career. It doesn't have to be just a social impact. It can also be about these movements and moments in life. So I think you are a wonderful example of that. So let me rest assured, or for you to rest assured, that, yeah, you should be on the show, of course.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to describe some of the things that might be of interest to folks who are looking at exploring their own personal journeys.
Great. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, let me do a little bit of intro. People just heard, of course, me give the whole spiel about the show, but my guest today is Mel Soriano, and you are, I'll just say some of the basics. You're the owner and president of Eagle Rock Information Systems, which is a company that you founded quite a while ago. You and I were just talking about how you came up with the idea that I didn't know about, which I love. You're also very active in your faith, and I think you're connected even to a couple different organizations. I know you have a role in, or at least you had been, even just pursuing and helping organizations with social media, with a different church and another organization. I'll let you speak about that. You also, though, are just this really well-rounded, guy who's just wonderfully seeking out purpose and growth in life. And of course, that'll be a lot of our conversation. But I'd love for you, if we could just take a moment, you could also share with, our listeners a little bit more about yourself, maybe about your organization or about, faith in the organizations in which you work.
Okay. Let's see. First of all, I do work for a small company that works in technology and web and database and mobile apps. The stuff I do outside of work has to do with my involvement in the Episcopal Church. I am involved with All Saints Pasadena, which is one of the largest Episcopal churches west of the Mississippi. And about 5 years ago, I began to become involved with Integrity USA, which is the LGBT advocacy and support group for the Episcopal Church, and have done so on a national level. In fact, for the last 3 years, I serve on the board of directors and I'm in charge of communications and social media for the organization.
I didn't realize you were on the board for that as well. That's wonderful. I knew you were doing the social and the comms for them because we had spoken about that before. What was that involvement for in this, the last few years? Because it seems like your connection to some of that, and finding or helping to bring a voice to, just to the message and the organizations. Why has that grown stronger in the last few years?
I guess there's a certain part of me that's been growing and growing. What is my life about? What is going to make me happy? That's been growing so much and has become more focused. I think I returned to the church after quite a long number of years away from it. I returned to regular church attendance about 15, 16 years ago. And I realized that was making me happy. That's filling a need that work was not doing. There was a point in my life where I sat there and I said, I'm still not happy. My work is finally off the ground. We're doing well. So I buy a house. I'm not happy. I buy a car. I'm not happy. It's not stuff. Stuff that wasn't making me happy. And I realized, okay, there's more to it than stuff. So realizing that there was a larger picture out there made a big change for me. And so I returned to church. And about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I realized that too needed to expand. And I became involved with Union Station Homeless Services here in Pasadena, which is the largest homeless service in the eastern part of Los Angeles County. And I became involved with the LGBT portion of the Episcopal Church. And those have really allowed me to flourish in offering myself in a way that's really sort of feels right as to what I'm about, what I care about, what I'm passionate about, and helping people in the needs that they might have.
Yeah, I love that. That all makes sense. And I love that you talked about it's not about stuff, and there's this other purpose. In our past episodes, I've tended to talk, to people about, their growing journey, the various experiences, which I'm sure we're going to tackle some of that today. And just, I think this taps right into just what you spoke about, the maybe flourishing, in a new way. It's not about stuff. It's about doing the thing that feels right. So I especially want to talk about a couple unique experiences of yours. And we just, referenced it earlier, the one that you just completed last month, your pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago. And in fact, this was your second one that you've done. Because it's funny because I almost forgot that you had done that, and but I do remember you doing it before. So, I want us to dive into those a little bit too. And so for the folks that, may not know, maybe they haven't seen, the movie with Martin Sheen, they have a little knowledge or friends that have done it. But would you describe what the Camino is for listeners that may have not heard it?
Oh, sure. Like as you suggested, one of the easiest ways to learn about the Camino is to watch The Way, starring Martin Sheen in 2010. But it's an ancient pilgrimage route that goes from the border of France to the city Santiago de Compostela on the western edge of Spain, 500 miles. And traditionally, for 1,200 years, you would just walk out of your front door wherever you were in Europe and head to one of three places: Jerusalem, Rome, or Santiago de Compostela. And Santiago de Compostela is supposed to carry the bones, and they have there in the crypt the bones of St. James the Apostle, and there's a belief that those are the bones. But it's more than just a pilgrimage route that's been around for 1,200 years for the faithful. So you have folks like St. Francis did it 800 years ago, by foot from Italy. You have those religious folks, but you have also the folks who do this for their own journey and for their own sense of adventure. When I went 2 years ago, I met 3 Austrian boys who left their front doors in Austria and walked 3,000 kilometers, basically the distance of Chicago to LA.
Wow.
This time around, I met retired folks who walked out of their front doors in Holland and Belgium and Paris and Switzerland. So I met a lot more folks who had done the longer distances, not just the 500 miles. I myself started in Lourdes because I didn't do it so much specifically for some sort of a Catholic thing to see the bones of St. James. Lourdes is a pilgrimage site in and of itself, known for healing. Saint Bernadette was there, and supposedly the waters there have been involved with miracles of healing, and millions of people come to Lourdes every year hoping for a miracle. And I thought, I think there's a lot of people out there in the world who need healing. Mm. And I thought, I'll start in Lourdes and I'll walk 600 and something miles to Santiago, and I'll bring some of that water with me. And if I meet anybody who needs that, I'll share it with them. And if they believe in it, if they care for it, I'll have it with me. If they want an ear to listen to them, I'll have that with me. Mm-hmm. And if they want a shoulder to lean on, I'll have that with me.
I want to dive into that, but before we do, I'm curious just to understand a little bit about Camino too, because you talked about for the faithful, for the folks that maybe aren't going for that route and maybe even related to you, but for these, like the examples you talked about, like the 3 Austrian boys and the other folks, why would non-faithful folks actually do this pilgrimage and do this journey, whatever length it might be for them? Like, what are some of the reasons that people are doing this?
Well, it's really kind of interesting. As an example, with the Austrian boys, one turned 18 on the trip, and his cousin turned 19 on the trip.
No wonder we're calling them boys, because they are fairly young.
They really are boys. I call them my Austrian nephews. But when you ask them, they weren't raised in a religious setting. When you ask them, they'll say, "Oh, we're on an adventure." We wanted to go out and see the world. And after day of walking with them for 20 to 25 miles a day, I realized there was more to it than that. They were trying to figure their lives out. They were trying to find time and space to get in their own heads, to get into their emotions, and to try to see where their priorities in life were. And, whether you call that a journey inside your own faith, or whether you call that spiritual exploration, or whether you just call that meditation or vacation, that's something I think a lot of people need. And there's nothing like going into the forest or into the desert, if you will, to give yourself permission to have enough time to figure things out.
I understand that too. It's maybe it's not specifically this, and it could be for some, but maybe it's not specifically this specific journey, or this path, but it's also the opportunity to do that soul search, that clarity, the finding the purpose, time to think and interact in unique ways that we're not doing every day.
Exactly. And a lot of people prefer to be alone, on their own. And one of the nice things about doing this specific pilgrimage is you get a little bit of both. The first 4 days of my pilgrimage, the first 4 or 5, the first, say, 100 miles of it, I was on my own. And I was entirely in my own head for 8 hours a day until I would get to my hotel or rest stop. And that gave me so much time to think. But then once you get on the main Camino, where all these pilgrims are walking, and you're meeting a lot of the same folks, and you have a chance to interact with them, and you stay in dormitories with them, or stay and have dinner with them, you start realizing that you have shared journeys, and you could learn from them as you explore your own journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could see too, the being in your head for 8 hours. When you first said that, I thought, oh, look, that could be tough, which is probably the point, that you are doing that thinking. But I could see the connection point as well, where it helps you have a break to connect in a way and maybe get out of your head in a positive way. You were speaking about, as you were in Lourdes and you were, you would walk with, this blessed water. I'm wondering too, so, why a pilgrimage for you, and why the Camino specifically? Because why not something else?
Well, as we were talking about before, sometimes getting away from things is all you need. I started my business way back when I was just floating on the river in Guerneville on the Russian River, and I was just there for over a couple of hours just floating. And it suddenly occurred to me, I need to do something different. I need to do something that was for myself. And that was enough. But the beauty of getting away from people or from your own daily grind for an extended period of time, the beauty of that is that you free yourself from the false restraints and constraints of your life that you think are tying you down. And by breaking away from it, you are realizing, I don't need that. I don't need this thing that I thought was so important, because I've been away from it for a week or 2 or 3. I could get by without it.
Do you think that what caught my attention there too was false, restraints or constraints rather? Do you think that even getting away and then having that moment where I didn't need that, is it that we do need to get away sometimes, or get away from that false constraint to actually even see what they were?
I think so. Excuse me. 2 years ago, when I did the Camino, then I didn't see more than a handful of people on Facebook, for example, during the day. They might be on it in the evening, but not during the day. And this time I saw quite a number of people logging in during the day, during their breaks, and checking in on things. And that was a little bit different. But the most important thing about walking on the Camino is not judging other people's journeys. So if they feel that they can disconnect from their regular lives while on Camino, but still be on Facebook, that's for them to decide and not me.
Mm-hmm.
I had to step away from general Facebook and Twitter and social media so that I would not spoil, if you will, my own exploration. And I knew that I needed that. I knew that I would be distracted by events at home or concerns at home if I paid attention to that.
What was your ultimate goal out of this Camino? What were you hoping to achieve by stepping away, stepping away from the social media, from the everyday, the people that you knew? Yeah, what were you aiming for?
It's a little different this time than before. 2 years ago, when I went in September of 2014, I went because I was in a process known as discernment, which for those who are religiously inclined, it means I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to do with my life, even if it means going into ministry for a good portion of my life. And that Camino made things much clearer. And I'm actually in the formal process of discernment now to see whether or not I should go into the priesthood. So, surprise, I don't think you know that.
No, I did not. You can't see my face. I'm like, really? I feel there's a follow-up conversation coming down the road.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so I'm in that sort of exploration with the formal structures of my church now.
Mm-hmm.
This particular Camino has that knowledge already in my heart. So what I wanted to understand was whether or not that knowledge is going to make a difference for me in what my actual ministry will be. And so I have assumptions of what my ministry might be. Are these true? Are these real? Or are they just things I wish, I want?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a real calling for me? And so what I wanted to do is find out if this truly was where I was, where the world needs me, or the church needs me, where the community needs me, and where I want to be. And where those two meet, that's where I wanted to discover along this walk. And I think I have a much better understanding of that.
Well, that's good. How unfortunate would it be if you didn't?
Well, no. I'd like to make sure that that's clear. If it's not, that's so helpful to know where you shouldn't be. You know?
Oh, so by looking at it as the non-clarity to that is actually still clarity.
Exactly. Exactly. Because you're still making sure you're not walking down a blind alley and realizing, no, this wasn't really what I wanted. It's just something I thought I wanted because, my ego wanted it. But it's not really what gives me joy.
I think it's so smart of you to think of it that way, Mel. I'm not sure everybody would think of, the non-clarity part of it. I think we go into these, especially these sort of journeys or adventures or whatever we want to call them, as a moment of, I'm going to find clarity, and clarity equals an answer. It's more direct, or we're expecting it to be directive in a way, an aha moment. But I love that you just flipped it. Like that was even for me, I was like, oh yeah. Like, well, if it's not clear, then maybe really the answer is that it's not supposed to be this. So I think that's actually really smart. I think many of us that listen to this could really start to think about how we look for clarity or for answers and things and look at it in a different way. Not just look for I think a lot of us are looking for really clear where's the handbook, where there is I want to call them stereo instructions, which I don't think probably exist anymore, but where's that little manual, the guide for things. But it's for us to read between the line or look at maybe the haze as part of your answer. Smart.
Yeah, you know what, it's I think you're hitting it right on the head. A lot of people may already have in their head what they want the answer to be, and they're just trying to get affirmation.
That's so true.
And if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for affirmation, great, but just realize that's what you're looking for. If what you're looking for is, in fact, more open-ended, and you really want to have an inspired answer, an inspired direction, something creative and life-giving, then you have to be receptive to hearing that the blank spaces are just as important as the colorful spaces.
I agree. I love that.
One of the things I blogged about on my blog, I have a blog, letallwhoarethirsty.com. One of the things I blogged about during this Camino was called The Silence Between the Notes. And music would not be music. Art would not be art. Words would not be words if you didn't have a gap, a space, emptiness in between the parts that really matter.
Mm-hmm.
You need the void. You need to know where there's nothing in order to see the parts that stand out.
Yeah.
And so knowing where you're not supposed to be oftentimes makes it so much clearer to where you should be.
I wonder if people need to be in a certain place also to even know that, to let that resonate. I think about, in the world we have so many influences, and if you look at marketing and ads and things that we see every day on social media or on TV, things like this, they focus on milestones usually. They don't focus on the everyday, and I think that the in-between is forgotten a lot of the times. We see the commercial where they're really super happy, whatever, and because they're on vacation, they're doing something interesting, but it's not the everyday that we take these moments in. So it makes me think a little bit about that, like live in the moment. And also, I'm reframing it a little bit, but I think it's the in-between that gets the bad rap a little bit, I guess is where I'm going. We have to embrace that and know it, and then connect it back to those bigger aha moments or milestones or things that happen in our life.
Yeah, for the most part, because you know what? When I see on social media, I see people complaining about their jobs or complaining about their lives. Even at times when I wasn't very happy, I don't think I could ever complain about my life, because I thought, you know what? I put myself here and I have every tool at my disposal to get myself out of here. Why would I complain about it? It's not slavery that we are living in. If we are, we're enslaving ourselves.
I think it's the wisdom to understand that we have the tools to change those things. I think that's where I've talked to enough people. I think that it's back to those false constraints.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know how to do that? And I think people get lost. It's like finding that purpose. Well, what is the purpose? What am I really, or what's my passion? What am I really good at? What do I really want to do? I think people get kind of stuck sometimes because they haven't had the realization that you can actually do these things. Nobody's saying it's easy. It takes a lot of hard work and sweat. And like I was mentioning to you earlier, that, sometimes there's small sacrifices for a long-term vision that you're going for, and that may equal less time with family or whatever the thing is for a little bit or something or whatever it is. But I think that people haven't, I make it sound like a blanket statement on all people, but I don't mean it in that way. But for the folks that maybe feel like they're stuck in a job, that there may be real circumstance for that, but there are also other ways and alternatives if we are willing to take that opportunity.
And the same applies to relationships and other aspects of your life as well, where you live. These choices are for you to take on, and those sort of constraints are real.
Yeah,
but they don't have to be there if we're unafraid to look at them in a different light.
I love how you've connected all of that. I completely agree. Mel, I want to switch gears for just a moment, and I because we've talked so much about the why of the Camino, the aspects to which is really valid and important, and that's the stuff I actually really love, and I could probably talk forever. And my listeners would not like that. But what I do want to also hear about is, could you, I'd like to hear a little bit about, like, especially this specific journey that you just came off from last month. What's it really like being out there? You're alone, you're meeting different people. You're, like you said, you sometimes have days of just this deep thinking, and then also toward the middle of the trip, your husband also met you, so you have a little bit of a different journey with that. Could you maybe give us a little bit of like, what's it really like, or what happened?
There were sort of three phases for me, because the part in France, I was not on a traditional route, so I walked on trails and rural roads and streets and highways by myself for all those days. Then I joined the traditional route and shared it with all these other pilgrims from all over the world, from every continent out there. And you interacted with a bunch of people all of a sudden. And then a third segment of the trip was, as you said, walking with my husband beside me for the first time, and he was on his very first pilgrimage for the last 200 miles. So I had three different experiences that I could actually describe. When I went on my own, it's one of those things I fear the most, actually. I'm sort of an extrovert. I am fully embracing of that.
I was like, you're kidding nobody if you say you're an introvert. Even though, that's funny because, everybody thinks of me as an extrovert, but I have those moments where actually I'm like, I don't want to be around anybody. So, you never know, I guess. But I was like, oh no, you love people. You can tell you gain energy off that.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I need the downtime to think, but the energy, the motivation comes from other folks. Mm-hmm. That part scares me. It does scare me because I'm afraid of what happens when I'm in my head for such an extended period of time. A good friend of mine, who is, he was a monk for a while, but now he's the chair of an English department at a local university. He told me that it's actually pretty good that you're an extrovert and you're by yourself, because you could actually talk to yourself, talk to God, talk to anyone or anything you want, and have this conversation, vibrant conversation, and nothing's going to stop you. And I never thought of it that way, and it's true. You actually could have this really amazing argument with this non-entity.
Yeah.
And it's not hard for you because you're used to having a discussion.
Absolutely.
And then you have the opportunity to mingle with other people, where you walk for an hour or two, maybe have dinner with them or lunch with them, and discover things about them discover things about yourselves, and then mix that in with your private time.
In speaking of that section, like that second phase, when you are on the trail where there are others, when you're interacting with them, my only reference to this is watching, The Way, and where, and I've heard a little bit here and there, but what's that real interaction like? Is it that you literally are walking and somebody walks next to you and you end up talking to them? Or because I know there are different hotels or kind of hostel type areas that you may stop. So, I'm not really clear on how does that interaction really happen for you? Like, what are that? Because I just think like, it's interesting because here's a side note. So I have also listened to this other podcast called Sounds from the Trail. And these folks are actually on the large trails in the United States, which are obviously very, very different than what you did. And they're alone a lot, but they also talk about how they just randomly would, meet up with somebody because they're at the same pace of them walking. So when I think about your experiences, because they also had said, oh yeah, it's not like the Camino where you can stop and have coffee. It's not like that. You can't have wine on these other, Pacific trails and stuff. So I'm curious a little bit about what's that experience and that second phase for you when you are meeting individuals and you stop at hotels and maybe you're sharing a room or wine or dinner. What does that look like?
Well, let me just give you some examples. Normally you're walking along and you realize, I've seen that person before. I saw them at a restaurant or I saw them in the dormitory, and maybe I'll just say hi to them. And so someone will walk past you and you'll say, Buen Camino, which means have a good Camino, a good pilgrimage. And you might say hello if you realize they're able to speak English. If they speak a language I speak French and Spanish, so I might be able to communicate with them in another language as well. You try to have a conversation if you have the same pace. Oftentimes, when you have the same pace, you are definitely going to see them every single day. Not in the same pace in walking speed. I'm talking pace in terms of the bigger picture. You walk 15 to 20 miles a day. You walk 25 miles a day. That's the pace I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Because if you walk 20 to 25 miles a day, you're going to stop in pretty much the same sort of towns and villages along the way every single day. So you'll have many more opportunities to see them.
Yeah.
And I might stop to have a little picnic beside a stream, and I'll see someone walk by and say, hey, why don't you sit and join me? The stream is wonderful, and vice versa.
I love that. I just love it. Like, it's in the moment.
Yeah. And then other situations, for example, I came across, if you can imagine this, his name is Daniel. Love him to pieces. He's a student at Oxford University. And I slowed down completely. He was walking about a third of my pace. And the reason he was walking a third of my pace, only at about 1.5 miles an hour, was because he's walking on crutches. He has cerebral palsy.
Wow.
And he's going to take 3 months to do this Camino. And last I looked on Facebook, he's real close. He's now within 50 miles of the city. Mm-hmm. But he has gone the whole 500-mile route. And I walked with him for about a day and a half. And I walked his pace. I slowed down to that pace because we were just having such a wonderful, delightful conversation. And I only moved on when he said, I want to make sure you don't feel compelled to walk with me. It's okay. And I said, okay. Well, then it was a pleasure to meet with you, and I will be glad to follow you on Facebook. And that sort of serendipitous moment where you realize you could make friends even with people on a different type of journey than you are on. That's where you feel real connectedness, and it's not based on pace but based on common values and common concerns.
I would imagine too, even meeting people like that, like Daniel and other individuals, obviously I would think it would impact your your journey as well, your pilgrimage, because it brings a new perspective. When you mentioned the crutches, of course, my mouth dropped open a little bit. I thought, I can't even imagine that aspect of it. It's not that I couldn't do it, I guess. I didn't put myself there. I take for granted I can walk with both my legs and I can walk very easily. So I wonder, did you feel like, as meeting him and learning about him as a whole person and just other people, does that also impact you along your way?
Oh, most definitely. First of all, I really stopped complaining about my blisters and anything else that bothered me, because nothing could possibly challenge me as much as what he was facing. But more importantly was watching how he affected other people.
Yeah.
He brought out so much good in other people. People just would smile and would say hi and hello. Every single person would say hello to him as they walked past him. One older gentleman, clearly retired, wasn't even carrying a backpack. There's a backpack service for those who cannot carry their own backpack or do not want to. They'll carry a backpack to another village for under $10. This man didn't have his backpack. He clearly had someone else carrying it for him. He saw Daniel, and this Argentinian senior citizen offered to carry Daniel's backpack to his dormitory, wherever it might have been. And so he took Daniel's backpack, walked another couple hours with it, and when Daniel got to that dormitory, there it was. Wow. And Felipe from Argentina brought it there. And it was just beautiful, just absolutely beautiful to see how his journey was making other people so generous and so caring.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned this earlier, you captured moments and you blogged about your Camino. You did this prior to, as you were getting ready to leave I think you started your pilgrimage on May 12th. So before you did that, you kind of updated us through social on what you were preparing for, what you were thinking, what were your hopes and these parts of elements. And then during it, you also shared, from blog posts to videos to photos, which of course I enjoyed a ton of that. Why journal it that way and then share it with other people? Especially as you said, you wanted to get, stop from being on like the kind of the regular usage of Facebook and Twitter and these things. Why share it in this way then, or share your journey?
Well, I was off Facebook and Twitter and so on so that I wouldn't have input from the external world. I did not want to read the news. I didn't want to get caught up in the sort of life problems that everyone faces, because they're real, but they're the sort of things that I was trying to get away from. And so I was trying to avoid that stimulus. On the other hand, I also wanted to record my thoughts, my feelings, and to record them in a way that made me feel that I had to process these thoughts and feelings enough so that I could put them down. Mm-hmm. So that I could write them and have them make sense to someone else. If I didn't do that, I felt as though I would leave things too gray, too unexamined. And by writing it down, committing it, and it's not easy to blog on a mobile phone.
I actually did think about that, Mel. I thought, wait, are you doing this all on like you're thumbing along with on your phone?
Yeah, it was a bit of a pain, believe me, typing on a tiny little screen.
You need dictation, my friend, dictation apps.
Well, I would do this, and what it made me do was it made me commit to certain things, like saying, I don't know why. There was the one blog post. I don't know why she cried. I don't know why this one person was crying.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't know. To this day, 2 months later, I don't know why she was crying. But it matters to me that I wrote it down at that moment so that I could say to myself, I spent all day thinking about it, and I didn't understand it at that point. I could revisit it later on and say, I might have figured it out, but on that day, I still did not know.
Yeah. Well, I just think about, there's so many great moments like that you have, and your updates and whatnot. And I know that you also went back to 2014 and reread, your pilgrimage, and because I obviously I've done a little research and see that you have done some of that too. Do you find that as you will continue on, that maybe even these kind of moments, like you said with a woman crying, that this will help you even in the years future, that you can look back at this stuff and maybe have more reflection? Is that I guess my question is this also become a tool for you in the future?
I think so. Whether you journal into a diary that you keep on your desktop, or you keep a private blog to yourself, private journal, or whether you share it with other folks, that's for you to decide as to whether or not this is something that's too personal to share.
Sure.
Or not. For me, I know what things I have to keep to myself for my own personal emotional safety and security. But most things, as an extrovert, most things I feel, since I'm such an open book, are a tool for me to say, this is why you see the person you're seeing. This is why I see the person I'm seeing when I look at myself in the mirror. Mm-hmm. So I see it continuing so that I could look back on it and say to myself, okay, it's full transparency here, folks. Clearly I was a different person 2 years ago. You can read about it, I could read about it, and we all can understand and grow from it. But there's nothing about it that's going to be whitewashed in any way. I just want to be honest about myself and to others.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering, as we're starting to kind of wrap up some of this conversation too, I'm just wondering about, as you step out of the pilgrimage and you ended latter part of last month, and how does this, your experiences in 2014 and 16, now that you've done them both, and you obviously there are different experiences and maybe a little bit different outcomes or what you were aiming for. How do you apply, these experiences to your everyday life, like into your small organization? Because we've talked so much about, the soul and the purpose and these things, but you have this company that's technology, mobile, which is real life stuff and kind of technical and geeky. How do you apply things like your pilgrimage, if I could get that out? How do you apply those experiences to this every day?
One of the things that challenges everybody is to reintegrate back into the real world, and and kind of like an astronaut upon re-entry, saying, okay, I've been out there, and now I have to become a normal person again.
Yeah.
But not yet lose all the things I've learned while I was away. One of the things that I keep in mind as I work now is maintaining some of those lessons. For example, judgment. It's so easy to be judgmental on a day-to-day basis, whether out shopping or whether you're at work. It's so easy to just sit there and say, that's not the way you should do things. Mm-hmm. And perhaps make judgments about people based on that. Rather than doing that, I now feel as though with day after day exposure to lessons of avoiding that, you now have an opportunity or tool inside of yourself that says you're doing it, you're judging people. That's really not where you wanted to be. So you're more sensitized to it, and you could work towards changing that aspect of your life on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Some people, 2 years ago, for example, at my first staff meeting, some of my staff said to me, "You just totally answered that question in a way we're really confused about." I thought, I don't understand. They said, "We just thought you'd be mad, and you're not." And I said, "Oh, well, I could be mad, but there's no point to it. I sort of feel as though I could be mad if I get a blister. I could be mad if I trip and get hurt, but there's no point to it. The point of all that anger is to just vent, but really nothing constructive can happen from it. So what constructively can we do instead?" Was my reaction, and it caught them off guard, and it caught me off guard when they noticed it, because I didn't expect that it would already, from the first meeting, already be affecting me at work.
Yeah. I think that's a great application of pulling that back into real life. I'm curious about some maybe a bit of advice. We were talking about, for people stepping away and maybe for those false constraints and, maybe growing in a different way. What piece of advice would you offer someone who's looking to maybe discover themselves a little bit more, grow, feels a little stuck, but they can't take a pilgrimage? Is there something that you have experienced or learned out of this where maybe there are opportunities in kind of your everyday that you can try something else?
Certainly. There's so many different ways you can carve out for yourself times for yourself. It's really a matter of being intentional about what your needs are and what your objectives are, and knowing yourself or trying to know yourself. So what I've done in the last few years, even before I began the pilgrimage, was to commit a certain number of minutes every morning, waking up just a little bit earlier and just reflecting on the day before and reflecting on what I want my life to be like today. What sort of, if you're prayerful or of that nature, what sort of people in your life need some attention, and perhaps you could give them a call or a prayer. Just stepping outside of the normal construct of what work life is supposed to be about, and spending, say, 10, 15 minutes of that every morning to center yourself at the beginning of the day so that you could start your day off in a better frame of mind. And if it's at all possible to do it at the end of the day, great. Do it at the end of the day as well. But I think in the morning it's better, because sometimes you go to a dinner party, you're too tired,
and maybe too much wine.
Or you've had a drink or two. It's not the same. It's more important to do that when you're kind of at your authentic, honest moment with yourself, and that's usually in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so smart too. Like, it doesn't have to be a month and a half long journey, or it could be every day, and you could just be intentional. There again is my favorite word lately. But it's so true. Be intentional, and I think that's great advice. Well, Mel, I think this has been wonderful. I mean, I've really enjoyed it, and I got to tell you, like, I love the way that you are intentional and the way that you have thought about what you were going to do while you were doing it, and in what you've brought out of that. We obviously all continue to grow, but you're being very intentional about it. So I think this has been wonderful to let us in to just talk more about it. So I've had a great time.
I have too, and I appreciate the fact that you invited me to speak with everybody, and I hope that some of my comments might be of interest to folks.
I think they will. The one thing I'd like to end with is where can people learn more about the pilgrimages, the 14 and 2016, and where can they follow along online with you?
Well, my blog, letallwhoarethirstycome.com, is out there. They could easily follow me on there or on Facebook, Mel Soriano. And I have a Twitter account, Mel Soriano. And for the pilgrimage, there's the American Pilgrimage Society out there. They're on Facebook. They have a website. They could follow them on Facebook. And boy, you see pictures and you hear comments and you hear questions from folks who are trying to figure out how they could do the pilgrimage themselves. So those resources are definitely available. I'm a member of that society, so I could answer questions for folks if they have anything for me. I'm thinking I'm probably going to return actually to the pilgrimage. I know you don't know this. I may be returning this fall.
Wow.
To do just 100 kilometers, 60 miles with folks from Pasadena who need a leader to lead them on such a pilgrimage. So it's a much shorter trip, and I'm possibly going to be doing it again in just a couple months.
Wow. I mean, I love that. Well, I think those are, first of all, great resources, and we'll definitely share all that information about following you along and finding all that information. And I know that you and I will talk about this in the future too. If you end up going in the fall, I'd love to hear more about that. And I would imagine we'll see more updates online.
I hope you do.
Well, Mel, again, this has been so great. And thank you so much for, letting us tap into the why and the how of it all.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate it very much.
Now, over to you. Any thoughts or questions you'd like to share? Seriously, do you have any questions you'd like to ask me or the guest? We'll answer them and even get the guest to help us. So send us a message, use our Facebook page and email us there, or post a comment or question on the page, or tweet us at accidentalinfo using hashtag #livingyourjourney. You can find out more about all the guests, links to their sites and social channels, and even bonus content all at accidentalinformation.com. Now, a couple favors. Go subscribe to the show and you'll be the first to get the download before everyone else. Also, take just a couple moments and head over to the show in iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a quick review. Quick, easy, and I would love it. This totally supports us and it helps me bring in interesting guests each week and keeps the show going. Also, I love to read them and see what you guys are really thinking. Thanks for joining the conversation, and remember, Living Your Journey is available every Tuesday. Until next week.